All right, we're back out here with this Holtzfforma 395, ready for another test run. Complete new top end on it, new piston, new cylinder, new rings, everything. It's all been replaced. Basically starting over from scratch. I did a bunch of testing on the previous top end and I just couldn't get more power out of it, so we put a whole other top end on it, build it completely different style of boarding, and build and machine work and everything is what I had on it previously. So today we're gonna fire it up and see how she does. Now on the bench, it already feels better. Just the way it felt running on the bench, it did feel better. And I did a compression test, so right now it's sitting at 185 pounds of compression. The best we got previously was 190. So I think this, once it's broke in, I'm hoping to settle in closer to 200 or so. And like usually in the first cutting session or two, it's not unusual to get 5 or 10 pound of compression out of the first 2 cutting sessions. So we'll see how this, I'm going to keep track of it. I'm going to keep track of this compression. We'll see how she turns out, where she ends up at. You know what I mean? Because eventually it'll just stop climbing, and it'll stop. It won't continue to climb on compression. So we'll kind of know at that point. And we should see this go through the whole process of break-in, seating the rings and all that. But today, we're not going to take it easy on it. We're just going to have at it and see what happens. This is going to be the first cuts out of it, so typically the first cutting session is not as good as your second or third cutting session. So of all the cutting sessions you're about to see with this saw, today should be the worst one. So, you know what I mean? Let's find out. Let's get her started up and make some cuts. Here we go. We're making our first cuts. There's going to be some tuning involved here. I've never made any cuts with this setup, so there's definitely going to be some tuning. All right, there we go. I think this is the strongest version so far. Strongest. Is it faster? I don't know. But it's definitely the strongest. We're going to wait until we get a few more cuts on it before we do a comparison, though. And see if it's faster than, our first rendition. Because, we just kept losing. After that first rendition, we just kept losing power. Just changes after changes, it just kept losing power. So new top end, new style of build, and we'll see if this is faster. I want to run it a little bit more before I do that test. I don't want to test a well broken in top end against one that's literally on its first cuts. So yeah, we'll probably do another session or two like this, watch the compression and see how things develop, and then we'll do that test. Now, I can already tell you, this is probably the strongest version that I've done so far, torque-wise. It definitely has the most amount of torque. We're pulling an 8-pin, by the way. I forgot to tell you that. I do have it on an 8-pin right now, and it's loving it. It's not having any issues with this setup on an 8-pin. Makes me wonder if we're going to actually outrun the first rendition now, because heavy, like when I start dogging it on it and all that stuff, we're pulling at like 11.3 on a dog. We're at 11.3, 11,300 RPM on a dog. Self feed is close to like 11.5 to 11.7. So we're basically right back to about the same RPM we were starting with. That really hasn't changed at all. It's just everything I'm doing is affecting how much torque it has. I'm not getting it to spin up any more RPM than I am, but it's definitely changing the torque level. So there's definitely something here that just does not want to spin out more in the RPM. I've seen a lot of videos of these, and it seems like they all pretty much cut about the same RPM. And it's like different levels of torque is what you're seeing. So now whenever I'm telling you the RPM here, This is how much RPM it is heavy in the load. The free rev's 13, almost 14 grand. But whenever it's heavy in the load, that's the RPM range I'm talking about. It's 11.5, 11.7. And it seems like all the work I've been doing is basically changing how much torque is available. I can tell you, this is the cleanest running version we've done so far. Definitely. You can definitely tell a difference now. I have more freedom on the dogs to force it, you know what I mean? And I'm thinking for a race, if it continues down this path for a race, we might be looking at a 9 or 10 pin. We're going to be exploring that because it definitely feels like now that I have enough torque to possibly run a 9 or 10 pin. We're going to see though. We'll be doing that test later. We'll see. We'll go 7, 8. I don't have a 9 pin. Those sprockets are really expensive. They're like $50 for a 9 pin. I do have a 10 pin. So we'll test between a 7, 8, and a 10. And if the 7 ends up outrunning an 8, it's definitely going to outrun a 10. You know what I mean? But if the 8 ends up outrunning the 7, we'll compare it to the 10 pin and kind of go that way. We got some future testing to do. I think the next test session is just going to be probably off camera, just make some cuts. If it's not off camera, it's because I noticed something, or you know what I mean, there's a drastic change in the compression test or something. So we'll see how she develops. I might do a cutting session or two without the camera though. We'll see. But I'm happy now. She's starting to feel a lot better. I'm a lot happier. So stay tuned. We'll see how she develops.